Hi, I'm Greg. Welcome to Affect Studio. I'm here today to compare 15 12-inch speakers. Yes, that seems like a lot and it could be a bit overwhelming, but don't worry, I have put timestamp info, or will have done, in the YouTube comment section so you can actually jump directly to any of the speakers you want to hear again if that's what you're interested in. Otherwise, as an overview, this really will give you a bit of an understanding and to be able to hear how speakers will change the sound and response of an amp. Now, while fascinating and informative, a test like this can also be dangerous in that what sounds good in one amp may not necessarily sound as great in a different amp. And I've been trapped by that before, where I did a test years ago like this, and as a result of that, I actually sold speakers in my AC30 that I'd had in there for almost 20 years, I think, at that point, and been very happy with because they didn't sound as good as speakers comparing it to, but I wasn't actually comparing them in the AC30 cab with the AC30 driving it. And so I later, came to miss those speakers. And likewise, at the time, I put one of the speakers that beat out the Celestion that was in the Rivera 3012 combo that I'd used as part of the tests, and took it to a gig and hated it. It just didn't sound right anymore. And so quickly put the original back in, which sounded the way I wanted it to and the way it was intended. So before we go any further, I just want to start by playing you something, and I'll explain this in a second. Now, listening to that, you probably think you're hearing three different speakers. After all, this is a speaker comparison test. But actually, that was a Celestion Vintage 30 in my old Rivera 3012 combo, followed by my Marshall Astoria cab, and followed by my Tweed 5E3 Deluxe style cab. So completely different cabs. And so based on that, I would hear that, say in the last one, and it's a lot grittier, not as refined as, say, the Astoria cab, and possibly think, okay, I don't like that speaker. Whereas hearing it in the Astoria, okay, sounds fantastic. Now let me give you another demonstration. So that time the sound was very different to the first one, in that the first cab was quite bright and a little grainy, like the last one was, the third one in the first example. And then the final one was quite warm and quite rich. I quite liked that sound. Now that was exactly the same cabs in exactly the same order. The difference being that was a Celestion Blue speaker. So based on that one, I would, in the 5E3, I would say that the Celestion Blue was, a great combination, which is actually what I use in my 5E3. Now the blue in the Rivera still sounded great, but it was certainly a lot brighter and, a little scratchy in comparison. So anyway, you can see how just comparing the speakers with the one cab is not going to give you the full story as to what you're hearing. So just a warning to keep that in mind when you're listening to these, unless it happens to be the exact combination that you're going to be using. It can only tell you so much. But as I say, it's why I've got three sections to this, so you can actually hear how they compare in different style cabs, and they've quite different sounding cabs for that reason. So hopefully it's helpful. Another danger in a comparison like this is that we're influenced by what we hear before and afterwards. So for example, if you've been listening to some darker sounding speakers and go to a brighter one, it's going to sound, it might sound too bright. It may sound painful in comparison, and obviously vice versa. If you heard some bright sounds, go to a dark one, that might just sound really dull and lifeless, where actually it might be exactly the right combination for something else. So I've tried to get these to flow as much as I can in put similar sort of speakers together. I've also matched the average levels of these. If I did the peak levels, some of them are going to sound really quite anemic in comparison. And I figure at this point in history, most of us aren't looking for excessive volume. We're fortunately at a period where we're looking for tone. We're looking for the best tone we can possibly get because PAs will do the work. Efficient speakers aren't necessarily needed for anything other than, whether you like the sound or not. All right, let's get to the examples. To do these, I recorded myself into a DI box and then fed that signal, so completely unaffected signal, out of the computer into my trusty reamp box, which reamp box converts the line level signal from the console or the converters to the guitar level and impedance signal to go into the amp. So you're hearing the exact same performance every time. I actually did a test like this many years ago. I think it was 12H-7s, and posted it on an amp building forum, and someone commented on how incredibly consistent my playing was. And that's like, nope, actually reamp, same performance every time, because of course we want to minimize the variables so we're only hearing the change in the speakers. And then likewise with the cabs, I've set them up so I can put them back in the exact same position each time. I can move them out of the way, change the speaker over, put them back, and the mic was untouched, so that the relationship between the speaker and the mics is unchanged for every one of these. It's the same for the distorted and the clean clips. So the only variable here is the speaker itself. As an added bonus for this set, I actually videoed the speaker in action for each one, and so I wanted to see the amount of excursion from the speaker, how much I'm moving, because some of these, there's about 15 watts going into these. So for things like the Celestion Blue, it's basically full power. For some of the ones that are 75 watts, around there, it's obviously only a fraction of what they can handle. And surprisingly, I've watched these clips already. They didn't necessarily move, corresponding to the amount of power they could handle. I was quite surprised by the difference. Anyway, so you can listen and look, and I'll see you in a minute. right, so how'd you go with that? Interesting, isn't it? There, some of them were quite similar and others were, quite different. I didn't think any of them sounded bad, but they're certainly different. Now, that was my Green 15 AC 15 Matchless style amp, which you can see in one of the other videos. And if you're a Kemper or Quad Cortex user, I've given away free profiles and captures of that amp. Let you try that out. And it's gone into my old Rivera 3012 combo lying on its back, so it was like a closed back cab. Now, the next set is clean, and I use my Marshall Plexi style head for that. This is still into the Rivera cab. The reason I used the Green 15, and the Marshall style amp was because I needed variable output impedance. I needed to be able to do 8 and 16 ohms for the speakers I have, and they were 2 of the 3 amps I have that will work on both impedances. So here's the clean example. All right, so that's a clean example. It's interesting that you hear different things when not being driven as hard. So the next video coming up is same speakers into the Tweed cab. So you'll hear some different things there. You'll hear that some of the speakers that, you know, didn't necessarily sound as good in that cab clean sound fantastic through the Tweed, and the same with some of the overdrive. So yeah, it is a different experience, worth watching. But as always, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and stick around and watch the next video when you get a chance.